This is the greasy world of the MC Roadcrew. Get ready as we fire it up, take a ride through New England's two-wheeled underground. Each episode, Butch and Ray will take you to the rides, bikes, music, hot rods, and people that make it all happen. It's not about chrome or being home. The road is calling. Welcome back to MC Roadcrew, our little science experiment for in-house production. I'm Butch, be your host for this evening. I'm here with Robert Pradke.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay, Robert, first time I remember meeting you was probably about 8 or 10 years ago in East Hartford, over on Robert Street. And that was when the Road Agents Car Club kind of introduced Central Connecticut to the rat rod, true hot rod scene. Kind of curious, how things developed. What was the impetus behind you putting on the show? And it ran for a few years, and I remember it was pretty much a benchmark event.
Yeah, it's as far as Northeast Connecticut or New England, really. The Croceys actually started the show. I was bombing around with Chop Top 54 Chevy, knew them, and we were friends. They started it as just a party for people to get together, and real honest, just kind of get together for the hot rod guys. And then each year that went by, it kind of grew and grew to the point where, the magazines took notice of it. People started coming from California, New York, Indiana, so it really pulled a lot of good, traditional hot rod stuff out of the woodwork. And there was a lot of stuff there that, came to our show, at the time, and that really didn't go to a lot of other shows at all.
Yeah, I find it kind of ironic. First time I went to the show, it was like a really eye-opening experience. It was literally chrome doesn't get you home, and it was just really like it was a Friday night, the night before the show.
Yeah, that was usually the pre-party. That was a good blast.
Yeah, the stuff was just rolling in. How many years how continuous
I think
was the show?
I think it ended up being 8 or 9 years, to be honest with you. I forget now. But the biggest claim to fame of the show was there was criteria where people wouldn't be able to be let into the show if they didn't meet. So that was like a catch-22 for people. They hated it, but that's what drew them to the show to begin with. Not that they couldn't get into the show at all. There was an outside venue that they could park in safety, and it was like a show within a show.
Yeah.
But everybody wanted inside the grounds, and but it's I don't know. It caused a lot of flack for a lot of the members at the gate, but it was well worth it. You know, it made the reputation the show got.
I mean, yeah, because prior to that, the closest that you could get for that type of a vibe was maybe the cruise night down the Berlin Turnpike or something, which was open to everything. You know, it wasn't a show per se; it was just spontaneous. But the show over there in East Hartford was like, for myself at least, it was really eye-opening to the for lack of a better term, the underground scene. You know, there was stuff there that you might have seen in a magazine before, but to see it, you know, right there, be able to touch it, talk to the owner, the guy that wrenched on it, and everything else was like absolutely wild. What was I mean, it seemed to be gathering quite a bit of steam, and then it just, you stopped. Was it getting to the point where it was unmanageable, or was it just kind of?
The main reason it kind of faltered or whatever was the venue actually ran into a problem. We looked into actually holding it at a different venue, but excuse me, it didn't hold what that did. You know, you were right off the highway. It was a grassed area. You had a pavilion. There was 2 hotels that were within crawling distance. You know, a lot of people slept in their cars in a parking lot, and you know, it was just it had enough of so many different flavors to where we thought about moving it several times. And it was just because, you know, we needed a bigger spot, but nothing fit the bill, and we were worried that it just wasn't gonna do the show any justice. So why beat a dead horse? You know, you close it out on top, and it remains an icon for what it was. I mean, at the time, anything close to that, to be honest with you, it was on the West Coast, and I think that's what really hit home, you know, for the East Coast. Because, you know, other than, I mean, you've got some other ones like, you know, Let East, or, you know, a couple of the other bigger shows. But this was more, like you said, it was more like a gritty kind of down, you know, underground kind of, you know, scene, which, you know, with the rockabilly stuff. So more bands orientated, you know.
Well, as far as, I mean, it was a class show, class operation. As far as going out on top is, without a doubt, the last time I went to that show, it was phenomenal. And every show to come up since you've stopped running that show, whether it be Motorcycles Hot Rod Riot, Milltown Inc., their show up in Western Mass, or the Fallout, or anything else, definitely owes a debt of gratitude to that show, because I mean, before then, this was strictly magazine stuff, or like you said, West Coast. I mean, it wasn't happening here. You know, you had little pockets here and there, and that was it. But that really seemed to solidify that movement over here in Central Connecticut, Western Mass, and you know, you're drawing people from West Coast the last year of it, and it was just outrageous. But then after the show wrapped up, per se, or you know, you stopped holding it, what avenues and venues did you explore after that? Because at the time, did you have your own paint shop at the time?
Oh, me?
Or, yeah.
Oh yeah, yep. I've been in the industry for, you know, doing what I do since actually I started my shop when I was 18. I moved out of New Jersey at the age of 18. Had a rollaway chest and a couple $100. Needed to get out for certain reasons out of the state, and knew some people up in Connecticut, rented a room and rented a garage spot, and basically just took off from there.
You hit the ground running and haven't looked back.
No, new start. You know, Connecticut was a great place for a complete, you know, new start for me, and I was able to do that. So, you know, my mainstay was restorations and, you know, sleds. My father, growing up, he was a plumber by trade, but he was always, you know, whether it was a pickup truck, an old pickup truck, or a lead sled, he was in the Oldsmobiles. Bring me down to Englishtown, New Jersey for the swap meet and car shows, and there again, Let East was another big one. And in Jersey, there's a huge lead sled kind of underground, you know, New Jersey Torch, the Fonz. I mean, these are all, you know, 4950 chop top Mercs and flamethrowers, and you know, it was a neat scene there. So I kind of brought that with me into what I do.
Well, it sounds like definitely you have the criteria for a hot rod family. I mean, that was what the whole scene was about. It wasn't running down to the parts store and buying the newest little gewgaw. You know, blue collar guys wrenching on their own stuff, getting dirty, taking it out over the weekend, showing everybody what they had or what they're doing with it. You know,
you scrounge for what you need. I mean, and if you didn't, you kind of cut and weld and kind of made what you could do.
Yeah, that's excellent, man. Now, I remember a couple of years ago, first time I really saw one of the Indian Larry bikes, and at the time I didn't know who had done the paint or anything. It was kind of like when it was the chopper invasion of television. You know, we had choppers that were 16 feet long, couldn't go around a corner, and I don't know, then all of a sudden Indian Larry's on the scene again. He'd been in the New England area for years. He used to set up at Stafford Swap Meet, actually. And he was always, you know, a good character, you know, to talk to or whatnot. But he always kept it to the old school, for lack of a better term, true bobber. You know, and you got to be pretty intense in what you're into if you're going to run New York City with no front brake.
Okay.
And
that he was.
And then I find out that, you know, some of his paintwork is coming out of the woods in Connecticut here. You know, if you know, you can look out the window and watch bears run by and do airbrush at the same time. You know, and how did that ever come to be? I mean, was that strictly from reputation, from you having your own shop, or?
I was heavy into the, you know, custom culture stuff. I had met him down at Stafford Springs. Actually, I seen him, seen his bikes, what he was all about, and just kept an eye on him. And I was doing my own thing, was going to the Frank Morato Auto Show, setting up and doing some other things and just trying to promote myself. And I was talking to one guy one night at one of the shows, and he had said he knew Larry. And he asked me if I had ever met him, and I was like, no, I never met him. He goes, really? He says, he's a really nice guy. And I'm like, man, I need to be introduced to somebody like that rather than just walk up to him and say, hey, my name's such and such. So he brought Larry over, nice guy you ever want to meet. We talked for probably, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And he gave me some flyers for some shows he was going to be doing in Coney Island, and my wife and I decided to take the trip down, and it was a sideshow, freak show kind of thing, which was really cool. And he recognized me from there. You know, he said, "Hey, Rob, how you doing?" And then about a year later, he just called me up out of the blue and says, "Rob, it's Indian Larry. Remember me?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "How would you like to do some paint work for me?" I was like, "Man, I'd love to." So, and that's where it started. At that time, he was in Soho at a little shop, American Dream. And I think I painted 3 or 4 bikes out of that shop. And then he moved into the Brooklyn area. And that's when things really took off. And I don't know, I think I did all of his bikes for about, I don't know, 7 years anyway.
And you had your own shop since you were 18.
Yeah.
Before that, you were down northwest New Jersey, Delaware, Water Gap area.
Yep, Flemington, Clinton area, yep.
Yeah, it's one of the nicest places in New Jersey to be.
Yeah, it's nice country. Everybody's like, oh, what exit, ha ha. You know, I was like, no, man, I grew up on a little farm. There is no exit.
Oh, man, that's cool.
So it's a trip.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Been out your shop maybe once or twice, usually with Ray, our producer here at MC Roadcrew. And it's kind of cool, even just riding by, you look over the shoulder and see what else, you know, what new iron is sitting behind the fence line, you know, and you definitely have the shop dialed in nicely.
Thank you.
And everything,
Thanks.
you know, the shop reflects your passion for what you do. And I mean, the only claim to artistic talent I have is signing a paycheck. What you do makes, you know, the Mona Lisa look like some kid's scratch paper work.
Oh, you're too kind, thank you.
Let's say somebody decides, okay, I want something simple, a Sportster peanut tank. You know, you got one piece, they bring you a decent tank. I mean, besides the usual typical body work, you know, sand it down, prime it, sand, fill, and everything like that. I mean, the level of your finish is so great that are there more steps involved? I mean, how close to perfect do you have to get the base per se?
That all depends on each individual job. Your level of perfection, and I had this conversation with somebody recently. I hate to say it, but I really never go after the perfection side of things. I do my steps, and I do them to a degree that I'm comfortable with. But my overall aspect of things is creating an art piece that I'm happy with. The flow lines, the color combinations, different mediums, whether it's be leafing or the flaking candy with the panel work and stuff like that. And each aspect of that brings in another aspect of something else. So it's perfection is. It's a really hard thing to define. I'd rather, there's not going to be any dirt or any hair or any mismatched lines or anything like that in my work, of course. But it's just, that's a given. Put that aside. I'm looking to create something that really never was. When I do my paint work and I actually do a flake candy panel job, I don't want it to be on the bike and somebody say, "Hey, that kind of looks like such and such bike." When I do something, I don't buy bike magazines. I don't go to a lot of shows purposely because I don't want to have that influx of what everybody else is doing. I just stick with my thing. And people have kind of really dug it and reached out to me. I mean, I've been real fortunate because of Larry bringing me into the fold of things and meeting different people, doing the Discovery Channel stuff. I've done work for Abu Dhabi, Thailand, England, Australia. So it gets to the point where a lot of these guys are building, $100,000 bikes, show bikes, older school style stuff. And the guy from Abu Dhabi, he created his frame, front end, tank, fender, everything minus the rims and the motor and tranny in the crate, shipped it over to me, had a color in his mind, and that was it. Wow. So, I mean, they're lending me my freedom to do what I feel is necessary. So sure, I do all the body work and all the prep work and everything at the shop, and then from there it's just like, man, just go.
Wow.
So I mean, and that's a true pat on the back to me, I feel.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you're just staying away from the shows and the magazines. It's like you're keeping the purity of objectivity is the most important. And after hearing your explanation one night, it's like you truly are approaching it from the artist mindset versus, okay, I got another set of tins to do. And
it ain't, after your money's spent, you're left with what you've done. And I've always been true to that. You know what I mean? Yeah, today's society, I mean, money rolls everything. Yeah. But it's, after it's spent, you're left with what you've done. Yeah. And I mean, after it's out there for a year or two or three, I still want it to look as cool as it did when it left. So it's just kind of, it means more to me to put out a nice piece, something that I'm proud of, and not something that's, that's been, just an off branch of something else that was done. Yeah. It's my style or a certain style or whatnot, but.
And that's, I mean, no matter where you look, whatever trade it is per se, even like, you're talking about your dad was a plumber, and, whatever trade somebody does or avenue they pursue to make a revenue or something, if you can be passionate about it and proud of what you're doing, that's paramount. In today's society, there's so much throwaway stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are talking about cars that are 50, 60 years old that you could jump in and drive to Florida and back and look good doing it and enjoy it. And if it does break down, you can get out there and fix it.
Yeah.
Whereas now you buy a car 5 years later, you're ready to throw it away, and it has absolutely no aesthetic value to it. It'll never be cool.
Right.
I mean, it's just a cookie cutter, piece. It's all about saving them and not crushing them. But what if you're working on something, you have an idea. What is the biggest, I don't want to say the hardest aspect, but what is the biggest challenge? I know you work with leaf and the turning in that, to me, I'd end up probably denting the tank trying it. Because I just can't imagine working with something that fine and trying to transfer it onto metal. And what is that one of the more challenging aspects of a finish, or?
It's another medium to bring into. It's an old sign craft, and it is a true 24, or excuse me, it's 23 carat, and it's pounded. My stuff I get from Italy. And it's pounded to the point where it's tissue paper thin. I still use a size, which is, in layman term, it's like a glue, which is brushed on. I allow it sit 12 hours, and then I go ahead and start my process of, laying the leaf on, and then burnishing it or engine turning it with a piece of, I put a piece of cotton inside of a old piece of velvet. And the velvet is just the hairs of the velvet are taut enough to where it'll actually, mar the finish into a circular pattern, and you just keep on going on your way with it, and it looks engine turned. The light picks up it in different degrees and whatnot, and that's where you get that effect from. And they've got other leafing, copper, brass. I use a lot of platinum leaf. Variegated, which is a heat-treated copper, gives a bunch of different colors and whatnot. So it's just something to bring into to the custom paint field, rather than just your paint or pinstriping and whatnot.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting because we're covering the gamut here from some of the cars and bikes will have more patina than they will finish on them.
Yeah.
And anything from a rattle can to high-end turning, but it's all under the same cover, if you will, of the scene that everybody seems to be dabbling in. Only a few people are in it 100%.
Right.
Now, what is, do you do much car work, or is majority of your
The last
stuff
few,
right now?
I started out doing restorations and hot rod work. I never stopped. I still do collision repair for a couple people that that actually want something done right. The motorcycle scene took off, and it allowed me to really do my artistic stuff a lot more than the car did. So I kind of gravitated towards the motorcycle scene for a while, which I still do a great deal of. But with that comes a lot of new people interest in, hey, I do want this new car, this car done, or whether it's flames on a brand new vehicle, or scallops, or just some hand pinstriping. And I still do sleds. I chop tops. I cut my own glass. So there's a lot of things that I get into. I'm not just a paint shop. I'm not just a pinstripe shop or a airbrush shop. I do. I'm the only person at the shop. So I do the car stuff. I never stopped. So it just one slowed down, I picked up the other one, and then that one slowed down, or pushed that one a little bit, and picked up another one. So it gives my mind a diversity, so I don't get bored.
Wow. Excellent. It kind of sounds cliche, but people say if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. What do you?
Yeah, no, it's cool. I love it, and if I didn't, I don't think I would do anything. To be honest, I don't know anything else. This is what I do, and the passion that I have is for it. Creating something, and being recognized for doing what I do is a huge pat on the back for me. It really is. For other people to appreciate me, and for other people in the field. In the industry, because I do work for people that do paint, which is I think is really cool. When somebody that does what you do hands you something to do, It's just like, wow, this is really neat.
Yeah, it's kind of like somebody. It's like a tattoo artist going to another tattoo artist for something. It's,
right. He's not going to go to a crackpot.
Exactly. They have the critical eye for their own work, and they also know what they see in your work, and that's really, definitely a compliment. It's funny you've mentioned the Frank Murata show. When I was growing up in Hartford, I remember going down to the State Armory, and it was in the 70s, so had our fill of waterbeds and shag carpet in vans. But that show's been around so long that the first time I ever heard the term lead slide was my father was telling me a story that there was a car that Frank Murata Sr. owned that had so much lead in it, they had to put truck springs in it to get it off the ground. Have you done much with the lead work with ladle and whatnot? Or?
I never got into it. The closest thing I got to that was an old timer came in one day with an old box full of equipment, and in the box was this really cool lead spray gun. You plugged the thing in, you hooked your air hose up to it, you put the lead bar in the top and it melted the lead bar, and then you pulled the trigger and it actually sprayed the melted lead onto the panel. And it worked. And it worked. I tried it. I still got it. Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
I dig old stuff like that. I mean, old spray guns and stuff. But I per se, to answer your question, no. That's an art in itself. Some of the originators in the custom car industry with the hammer gas welding and the lead. I mean, that's just that's an art in itself. I'll use a MIG welder, TIG welder, and my body filler plastic, but that's a little beyond me.
Well, just out of curiosity, I mean, it sounds like right now you've run the gamut for sure. I mean, between the bikes, the cars, and it sounds like if tomorrow the industry curled up and died, you could just make a living doing repair, regular work, and still, you'd still find an avenue for your artistic work. What do you think? I mean, it's not trying to predict the future, but we saw the long chopper craze come and go, which could have been a bit more of a flash in the pan than it was. I don't think we would have missed it. The bobbers are in, and they've never really left. Modifying a frame or something for a chopper, it's cool. It's still, I don't like it. Stock vintage frame, hands off. The cafe scene is real big right now. That's coming back with a vengeance. I mean, that really did leave us for a while because when the super bikes hit, is there a scene from the past, whether it's hot rod or bikes or what have you, that you would like to see? Is there something kicking around that you're like, well, this is kind of cool?
I kind of dig it all, and it's kind of weird. My hot rod guys that know me, they consider me a biker, and then the bike guys I know, they consider me a hot rod guy.
You're a hot rod guy.
So it's kind of funny, but I had. When the Hayabusa first came out, we were at a bar, and one guy was all amped up. He was like, I just took delivery of this bike, and it was brand new. Nobody had one at the time. And then there was a couple Harley guys there, and they were like, what are you making such a big fuss about it for? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, the thing goes 200 miles out of the crate. I'm like, you show me an HD that does that, and I'll be just as excited. So it doesn't have to. I like everything. Whether it be a sport bike or European bikes, American-made bikes, the sled scene. I can't help but the American, between Oldsmobile, the Mercs. I mean, there are iconic sleds. But as far as the bike scene goes, I mean, and I hate to even go there, but the tuners these days. I mean, they're pulling 400, 500, 600 horse out of dual turbo 4 cylinders. So that's today's hot rod. So if you close your mind off on one, I think you're closing your mind off to a lot of other aspects. I mean, it might not be your scene, but don't close it out, because it could be an open door for you later on, or I don't know. It's just. I don't know. I like everything. I really, and I hate to be so vague in that aspect, but I just do. It may not be my scene.
But you can appreciate it.
But I can appreciate it
Right.
for what it is. And I get people, I've had guys come up with little, Mazdas, carbon fiber hoods, and want to do something. And I'm like, yeah, we can do something with that. We'll wet sand the carbon fiber down, and we'll add the same pearl that's in your car in over the carbon fiber, still retain your carbon fiber look, but have it match and blend into the fenders. So yeah, it's not my gig, but it's something on the scene that wasn't done in his scene, so it helps me out. So it's I don't know, the trend with the bikes and everything. They're it's endless, and it'll always be around.
Yeah.
It all depends on what hits the mainstream, and then everybody, it's cool, and everybody will get into it, and then they'll get bored. The norms gets bored, and then it'll go back to its original form.
Yeah, it goes full circle.
It always does. Everything did. The custom industry, that's done it 3 or 4 times so far.
Yeah. I mean, just with the cars, like when you touch base on the tuners, excuse me, I think it was back in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken. I think Miller had an Indy car that was front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So, and they were putting superchargers on cars back in the 30s and 40s. So, the idea of a 1.6 liter, which actually I saw this past weekend, I think it's a 1.6 liter, turn out close to 300 horses.
Yeah.
Here's an engine block you can literally pick up with one arm and walk across the shop, turning that kind of horse.
Or the little Rotac motors.
Yeah.
They used to put them in a little Toyotas. I mean, it's incredible. So, I don't know, it's just...
It's definitely a sickness.
Yeah.
There's so
And
much
I think
cool stuff.
it's just an aspect of chopping up and doing what you're into.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what it's based on is modifying an original piece of equipment to do what you want it to do or how it wants to look.
Yeah. No, it's definitely excellent. It's just it is a sickness. If it has wheels, it has my attention.
Yeah.
And whether you can afford to have the newest and hottest, or if you're into the older vintage stuff with some patina, whatever it is, it's good. It keeps it all rolling. Well, I want to thank you, Robert, for joining us tonight, and hopefully this science experiment will lead to more.
Sounds
Thanks
great,
so much,
man.
man.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you.